Hello, everybody. My name is Jack. I've gotten to work with a handful of you over the course of the semester, and today I'm presenting my inquiry and action project for all of you, which I'm excited to do because it's been a really fun and an interesting experience. First off, I'd like to say that it's been a pleasure to work with all of you over the course. Happy holidays to everybody. I've got like 2 weeks left until winter break, so that is exciting. And now, without further ado, I will get into my inquiry and action project. So I'm going to share my screen, pull up my presentation, and get underway. My job, I am a completely one-to-one high school English teacher with an education company. That is what they specialize in. So I like to pretend that I'm totally comfortable with Zoom, um, but I don't think anyone is 100% comfortable with Zoom. I'm pretty good though. I'm pretty good. So for my inquiry and action project, I spent the semester talking with my students essentially about what their ideal school was. Now, this is something that I thought about a lot and reflected a lot on and how I wanted to ask my students this, and really why I wanted to ask my students this. They are kids, working with me and this education company. Um, Largely due to COVID, it is purely remote. They still get, credited high school courses. So the COVID-19 pandemic has certainly brought a lot of students our way. It brought me to the company too. I wanted to be able to teach, but do it safely. Um, but at the same time, there are a lot of students with this company that are learning with us simply because traditional school did not work for them. And this could be because of mental health issues. It could be because of maybe just logistical issues. We've got students that live in very remote places. So for any wide array of reason, we have students at our non-traditional type of school. And so because of that, I thought that this question that I grabbed from Nieto way at the beginning of the course, I thought it would be really fascinating to talk about with my students and ask them about what their ideal type of school was, because they had already kind of distanced themselves from traditional standard school. So what prompted all of this research and this interaction with my students was from Nieto as follows. Engage your students in a conversation about their ideal school. How would it differ from the way it is now? Ask them to prioritize what they would want to see in their ideal classroom, and then, working in groups, ask them to think of ways to make some of the changes that they envision. So this was kind of the nucleus, if you will. I'm an English teacher. That's a very scientific term. But this was the nucleus of everything that stemmed in terms of my research and my interaction with students. I really wanted to take this idea and have my selected students that I was going to be working with for this research really take it to heart and think about what an ideal school would be to them, um, think about their past educational experiences and reflect on those and kind of just bring it all together, and create their own. They had a chance to create their own kind of idea of what an ideal classroom could and would be. So it was great to work with them. It was just absolutely fascinating results that we got to, and I enjoyed it very much. And I like to think that they did too. So I have kind of gotten into this, but I was really interested in this question, again, because of the type of school that I'm in. It is completely virtual, which is perfect. I just graduated from undergrad in May, virtually, of course. And I did not want to be a high school English teacher like I trained for 4 years, like I studied to be, and have 130 kids that I would see every single day during a global pandemic. So I looked for online jobs, found this fantastic one, and it is one-to-one formatted. So I have one student, just like we are talking right now, for a 50-minute period. and we meet an AB schedule. I meet with kids either Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday, and we just work through, their English curriculum. I've got a seventh grader all the way to a 12th grader, and it's just been fantastic. Um, so with this virtual environment, with this again non-traditional or irregular school like Nieto states, I wanted to get into this idealistic version of school and this question that would make my students ponder that. So again, as I alluded to earlier, most of these students, or a lot of them, are with us because of COVID. But at the same time, some students are here because regular school did not work for them. So, in summation of all of that, why I thought this would be such a great question to work with, um, these kids got to think about and reflect on a dream school. They're already in a different style of school, so it was fascinating for them to reflect on and kind of create and dream up what a dream school, or at least a dream classroom, could be like for them, um, especially during a pandemic when almost nothing is ideal or kind of normal. It was just fascinating to hear what they had to say. So, how did I research this? Being completely distanced from my students, we are not in the same classroom. I cannot say, hey, fill out this worksheet, give it back to me at the end of class, done deal. I did use a survey with every student that was willing to participate. They certainly had the option because I remember from being a student, forced surveys rarely yield effective results. So I asked them to see if they'd be willing to participate. Most all were. And then I asked them to really think creatively and analytically about what type of school they'd been in, what type of school they would dream of being in, and then think about some ideas and concepts in the middle ground of both of those. I administered my survey in class. Students were given time to complete it through a Google form. This way, I had responses tabulated and taken care of instantly. There's no paperwork to get lost. Again, naturally, we are virtual in terms of our school, so again, there would not be paperwork. But this way, I got everything in an instant, and students were able to keep everything private for me. They didn't have to verbally say their answers. They were able to fill it out, give it to me, and then I could view it later. So I think that that helped to, boost up the honesty, so to speak, with students giving me the answers that they did. So the questions that I asked on my survey were essentially, um, I think that school is A, fun and interesting, B, boring, C, stressful, or D, sometimes interesting. I asked, what is something you enjoy about school? What is something you dislike about school? What is something about school that stresses you out? What is something about school that you look forward to? My perfect school would have classes that are lecture based, interactive, conversation based, and then student led courses. Those were the four options for the ways classes were taught. And then additionally, if I got to create any aspect of classroom policy, it would be that. Was a short answer. And then if you were able to design an English language arts program, what are some aspects of it that you would think essential? So those were the questions that I asked my students via this survey, and the responses were really interesting from all the kids that I interviewed, and I really enjoyed getting to see what they had to say. Thankfully, over 60% of the students I interviewed, or excuse me, surveyed, said that they thought that school was interesting or fun. So me being their English teacher, that was kind of an exciting moment to see that data come in. Additionally, and this was more on the students' part than reflecting on me as the teacher, so all credit to them, but most students, again, over 60%, stated that learning was a priority with school, and that it's what they looked forward to or enjoyed. And then also, again, most students, it was over 60%. They said that their least favorite part of school was the homework, which wasn't really surprising because they are high school students. They have plenty going on, even in a pandemic. So I was really pleased with the first two and not surprised at all being a contributor to their homework load on a nightly basis. So I expected that one. Statistically speaking, I wanted to make sure to have a visual because that helps me as a learner, but a visual of the graphs. There's a majority in each of those three, really important categories of how they felt about school emotionally, what they felt was a priority at school, and then of course what they thought was the worst part of school, which really is important to think about and talk about, um, because if we don't know what they dislike the most, then it's really hard for us to make the proper adaptations for students. And then additionally, one of the questions, of course, was more emotional, based on school. But I asked for feelings, and 10% of students thought that school was boring. So that called upon me to certainly do some reflecting on different things that I could do to make at least English class better for them. Some of the uncommon answers I had when students were talking about their dream schools were having safe spaces, spaces that could allow for communication, kind of a two-way street versus a one-way street, teacher to student. But communication on a two-way street between teachers and students. The student said, quoted, regardless of race, religion, sexual orientation, students should feel welcome communicating with their teachers and feel comfortable in class. So I thought it was incredibly mature of this young individual to cite that as something that their dream school would have. I certainly share that with them, and ideally they feel that way about class with me. But they're absolutely right. A dream, ideal school would certainly have spaces like that, where students, are comfortable regardless. And that way, when we're comfortable, the learning just comes that much more easy and more naturally. So Nieto did want us to dive into conversation on what a dream school could be. And excuse me, it was two students, but these two students were able to reflect and decide at a very mature level that this was what they really wanted. So that was a very just promising to see that level of empathy and compassion for their fellow students. So I certainly celebrated that as an educator. In terms of ideas for the future, going forward, things that I could have done, um, in hindsight and in reflection, and some comments on my work, I think that if I were to do this in the future, I would use a panel of students to participate. I really liked using the survey this time. I think that it again allowed students to feel distanced enough that it could bring as much honesty to the table as possible. But at the same time, I think in a panel of just 5 or 6 students, it could be small. In a panel, all the students collectively would generate more ideas. Maybe the harder questions, like what kind of policies would you want in an ELA classroom? They could kind of collectively combine to think about answers. So for the future in administering this, I would certainly love to use a panel. That would just, I think, really create great holistic answers. And then finally, here's my works cited. So in conclusion, this project over the course of the semester was absolutely fascinating for me to participate in. The answers that I got from my students about their ideal school were fascinating. The two students saying that they would really want in an ideal school to have a safe space for all learners was just very promising to see. Again, young people feel so in tune with compassion for their fellow peers and students. It was really good for me as an educator to see that homework is strongly disliked, even though I suspected that, and to see that school could be stressful or could be boring, and then seeing the responses of that in their survey and seeing that. well, we could combat this by, maybe working more in class or making homework more fun. I didn't take those things lightly as a teacher, so the survey was very impactful for me as an educator to get to see all these results. So this was my presentation for my inquiry and action project. It was a pleasure to work with all of you over the course of the semester. I really enjoyed doing this work and this research. So thank you all, and again, have a happy holiday season. Stay safe and stay healthy too, of course.